its way. Held off McCain is loud and strong. For wherever we go, you will always know that the army goes rolling along. First to fight for the right and to build the nation's might, and the army goes rolling along. Proud of all we have done, fighting till the battle's won, and the army goes say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Station, this is your president. Do you hear me?
Station, this is Houston. Are you ready for the event?
Yes, we're ready for the event.
White House, this is Mission Control, Houston. Please call station for a voice check.
Do you hear me?
Yes, sir, we have you loud and clear.
Well, that's what we like. Great American equipment that works. And this isn't easy. I want to say it's very exciting
Yeah, we
to be
like
here
that too.
today. Very, very exciting. And to speak to you live with three brave American astronauts. These are our finest. These are great, great Americans, great people. To join us from orbit aboard the International Space Station, Commander Peggy Whitson and Colonel Jack Fisher. And Peggy Whitson has been setting records, so we're going to talk about that very soon. I'm here in the Oval Office along with my daughter Ivanka and astronaut Kate Rubins, who recently returned from space and from the space station. Together we are being joined by students all across America, thousands and thousands of students who are learning. They're learning about space, learning about a lot of other things. And they're watching this conversation from the classroom. And all over, we have astronauts and we have everybody. We're flying right now 17,000 miles per hour. That's about as fast as I've ever heard. I wouldn't want to be flying 17,000 miles an hour, but that's what you do. Peggy, Jack, and Kate, I know that America's students are thrilled to hear from you. But first, I want to say that this is a very special day in the glorious history of American space flight. Today, Commander Whitson, you have broken the record for the most total time spent in space by an American astronaut, 534 days and counting. That's an incredible record to break, and on behalf of our nation and, frankly, on behalf of the world, I'd like to congratulate you. That is really something. And I'd like to know, how does it feel to have broken such a big and important record?
Well, it's actually a huge honor to break a record like this, but it's an honor for me basically to be representing all the folks at NASA who make this space flight possible and who make me setting this record feasible. And so it's a very exciting time to be at NASA. We're all very much looking forward, as directed by your new NASA bill. We're excited about the missions to Mars in the 2030s. And so we're actually physically have hardware on the ground that's being built for the SLS rocket that's going to take us there. And of course, the hardware being built now is going to be for the test flights that will eventually get us there. But it's a very exciting time, and I'm so proud of the team.
Great. And what are we learning from having you spending your time up there? I know so much research is done. I'm getting a glimpse of some of it right here in the Oval Office. What are we learning by being in space?
Well, I think probably the International Space Station is providing a key bridge from us doing living on Earth to going somewhere into deep space. So on those Mars missions, we need to better understand how microgravity is really affecting our body, and we need to understand it in great detail. So many of the studies are looking at the human body. We're also looking at things that involve operations of a space vehicle on these long-duration missions, and the technological advancements that will be required. For instance, on a multi-year Mars mission, we're going to need to be able to close the life support system, and that means we, right now, for instance, are taking solar power that we collect and using it to break apart water into oxygen and hydrogen. The oxygen we breathe, of course, we use the hydrogen, combine it back with the CO2 that we take out of the air and make more water. But water is such a precious resource up here that we also are cleaning up our urine and making it drinkable, and it's really not as bad as it sounds.
Well, that's good. I'm glad to hear that. Better you than me. I will say, Colonel Fisher, you just arrived, and how was your trip? Complicated, easy? How did it go?
Oh, sir, it was awesome. It made even my beloved F-22 feel a little bit underpowered. It was, I launched in a Russian vehicle with my Russian friend, Fyodor Yurchikin, from Kazakhstan. Got the immediate perspective change as we got to orbit, and I saw that frail, thin blue line of life around the Earth. 6 hours later, we're docked to the station. The next day, I install an experiment in the Japanese module that's going to be looking at new drugs and how we can make those drugs for muscular dystrophy, Alzheimer's, multi-drug resistant bacteria, all sorts of things. A couple hours later, I watched our crewmate Thomas Pesquet, a Frenchman, drive a Canadian robotic arm to capture a spaceship from Virginia carrying 3.5 tons of cargo and science that's going to keep us busy for the next few months, and dock that to the station. Sir, it's amazing. Oh, and then, now I'm talking to the President of the United States while hanging from a wall. It's amazing. The International Space Station is by far the best example of international cooperation and what we can do when we work together in the history of humanity. And I am so proud to be a part of it. And it's also just cool. Like yesterday, I had, well, there you go. There's our resident space ninja doing the gravity demonstration. And yesterday morning, I had my coffee in floaty ball form, and sir, it was delicious. So it's awesome.
Tell me, Mars, what do you see a timing for actually sending humans to Mars? Is there a schedule, and when would you see that happening?
Well, I think as your bill directed, it'll be approximately in the 2030s. As I mentioned, we actually are building hardware to test the new heavy launch vehicle, and this vehicle will take us further than we've ever been away from this planet. So, unfortunately, spaceflight takes a lot of time and money, so getting there will require some international cooperation to get it to be a planet-wide approach in order to make it successful, just because it is a very expensive endeavor, but it is so worthwhile doing.
Well, we want to try and do it during my first term, or at worst during my second term, so we'll have to speed that up a little bit, okay?
We'll do our best.
You will, and I have great respect for you folks. It's amazing what you do. And I just want to introduce another great one. Kate Rubins is with us today, and she has been so impressive in research and so many other things having to do with NASA. And Kate, I understand you're the first person to sequence DNA in space. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so that was actually just this last summer, and it's a real example of what we can do with technology and innovation. We've gotten a sequencer down to the size of your cell phone, and we were actually able to fly that on board the space station and sequence DNA. It's not just the technology demonstration, but we can actually use that to do things like detect microbes on the space station, look at astronaut health. We can easily use that in Earth-based settings, too, to look for disease outbreaks and to do rural health care as well.
That's fantastic. That is really great. I saw some of the work, and it's incredible. You know, I've been dealing with politicians so much. I'm so much more impressed with these people. You have no idea. Now, speaking of another impressive person, Ivanka, you've been very much interested in this program. Tell us something about it.
Hi, Dr. Whitson. First of all, congratulations on your incredible milestone today. You may know that my father recently signed the Inspire Women Act to encourage female participation in STEM fields across all aerospace areas and really with a focus on NASA. So encouraging women and girls to pursue STEM careers is a major priority for this administration. And today we are sitting with an amazing example of that, Dr. Rubins, and you, Dr. Whitson. So I would love to hear from you. What was the impetus for you to get involved in the sciences?
Yeah, so when I was around 15, I actually went to a conference.
Actually,
that was very inspiring for me. It was sort of the beginning of recombinant DNA and understanding biology. And so just that exposure to scientists and the kinds of things that you can do with science and technology innovation.
Amazing. Dr. Whitson?
For me, it was actually the Apollo program was my inspiration, and that was when it became a dream to become an astronaut. But I don't really think it became a goal until I graduated from high school when the first female astronauts were selected. And seeing those role models, and with the encouragement of my parents and various mentors in college and graduate school, and when I started working at Rice, that's what made it possible, I think, to become an astronaut. And it took me a lot longer to become an astronaut than I ever really wanted it to take, but I do think I'm better at my job because of the journey.
You're an incredible inspiration to us all. So, I would also like to ask you one more question. I'm incredibly curious, as I'm sure all the students across the country are, to know what a day in the life in space is like. Could you share what a typical day looks like, what the challenges are, just any special moments?
Well, a typical day, we wake up and look at the messages from the ground because we have a huge ground team that's working overnight to prepare, changes or the details of the tests that we're going to be performing over the course of the day. So first thing I do is check out that, see what's changed. But on any given day, it can be so dramatically different. On one day, we might be focusing on science. On another day, we might be repairing the carbon dioxide removal system. On another day, soon, Jack and I are going to do a spacewalk. We talked about last Saturday, we did robotics operations. I love the diversity of the different activities that we do. Plus, we have over 200 investigations ongoing on board the space station, and I just think that's a phenomenal part of the day. Of course, there's also just the living and on board the space station. It's such a unique and novel environment, nothing that we're used to on the ground. And it's so special to just be in zero gravity. But Jack's the new guy here, and I think he can probably give you a better perspective on what that's like. It's still on.
Well, I everything here, my dad always said that if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And we work really hard up here, but it's not really work. It's just fun. It's like playing Fort almost, only you're changing the world while you do it. And then on the off time, the other morning I was working out, and on our machine that we work out on, right below it is the cupola window. And so when you're on the kind of device where you do crunches. Every time you come up, you see out the window, and it's awesome because you kind of go crunch. Oh my gosh, that's beautiful. I got to do that again. Crunch. Oh my gosh, that's beautiful. It's awesome. Everything we do here is fun, and it feels so great to know that we're making a difference on the ground and for the future of humanity as well. So it's an incredible job.
You're making a great difference, I have to say. And this is a very exciting time for our country. And you see what's happening with our country in terms of jobs, in terms of business. And there's such excitement and such enthusiasm. Many American entrepreneurs are racing into space. I have many friends that are so excited about space, they want to get involved in space from the standpoint of entrepreneurship and business. Tell us about the opportunities that could exist for the next generation of scientists and engineers. Is that something that you think a student, because you have so many students, hundreds of thousands watching, is that something that you think that students should be focusing, or should they be thinking about other subjects? What do you think are the opportunities for young students wanting to be involved in space?
Sir, absolutely. I think that this is probably the most exciting time in space exploration, certainly in my lifetime. We're about to just have an explosion of activity. There is so much involvement on the space station with commercial industries and commercial partners. We have an entire program to manage the science. NASA has done a wonderful job of seeding a new industry with the commercial crew program and the commercial cargo program, so that we can build the infrastructure we need for the future exploration. One thing I love about American entrepreneurs is once you get them going, you better stand out of their way, because they're going to start trucking. And we're about to that point. NASA is taking on that expensive, hard, complex task of going further and deeper into space with the wonderful new rocket Space Launch System and Orion. And then as soon as we break open that door, this incredible infrastructure that we've been building is going to be right there to pick up the baton and continue into the stars. I would say to all the students that are watching, the time to get excited is now. If you aren't studying science and math, you might want to think about that, because our future in the stars starts now, and you can be a part of that if, like Dr. Whitson, you can find that passion and work really hard, and we're gonna find a permanent foothold in the stars for humanity if you do that.
Well, thank you. So well said. And I have to say, there's tremendous military application in space. We're rebuilding our military like never before. We're ordering equipment, and we're going to have the strongest military that we've ever had, the strongest military that the world has ever seen, and there's been no time where we need it more. And I'm sure that every student watching wants to know, what is next for Americans in space? I'm very proud that I just signed a bill committing NASA to the aim of sending American astronauts to Mars. So we'll do that. I think we'll do it a lot sooner than we're even thinking. So which one of you is ready to go to Mars? Are you ready? And I think you're ready. I know you're ready, right? We just discussed that. She'd like to go to Mars very quickly. Who's ready to go to Mars up there?
We are absolutely ready to go to Mars. It's going to be a fantastic journey getting there, and very exciting times. And all of us would be happy to go. But I want all the young people out there to recognize that the real steps are going to be taken in a few years. And so by studying math, science, engineering, any kind of technology, you're going to have a part in that, and that'll be very exciting.
I just want to thank you very much. And Dr. Whitson, congratulations. Amazing. What an amazing thing that you've done. Everybody here, I know your family, but everybody here is incredibly proud of the record you just broke. I hope that every young American watching today finds in your example a reason to love space and think about space, because many great things are going to come out, tremendous discoveries in medicine and so many other fields. So Thank you very much. I want to say God bless you. God bless America. We are very, very proud of you and very proud of your bravery. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Wanted to come by and make sure we have an update as to what they're talking about, some of the issues. When she's done, she's got to join a meeting that's in progress. Secretary Mnuchin has some comments that he'd like to make. We'll take some questions from him and then resume the briefing. So without further ado, the Ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley.
Thank you, Sean. I will tell you we have had an exciting day in D.C. We are hosting the members of the Security Council, and when you think of that, this is the most powerful group that decides sanctions, relief, any sort of conflict that comes up. this is the group. And so the idea that they were able to come to D.C. is overwhelming for them. They are extremely pleased. We started the morning at the Blair House with Senators Graham and Cardin, as well as Congressman Smith and Congresswoman Bass. So they had a lot of interaction, probably about an hour and a half, talking about issues from budget all the way to peacekeeping issues, as well as conflicts in North Korea and Syria, and then with the problems in Iran. So it was a very healthy discussion there. From there, we came over to the White House, and the president greeted all of the members, had his picture taken with them, and then we all sat down for lunch. And it was an open dialogue, very much of the members wanting to hear from the president what his plans are, what he was going to continue to do on Syria or not continue to do, North Korea. All of those issues are certainly at the forefront. And the idea that he would have that dialogue with them is tremendously helpful to me. Whereas, in the Security Council, we need them to really engage. We need them to now know that we are about action. And I think that what we've tried to do in the UN is really bring reform in the way we spend, reform in the peacekeeping operations, but also reform in the resolutions that are passed, that what we pass actually means something, and that there's accountability in what we pass. And so I think they heard that loud and clear today from the president. I think that they are thrilled with the engagement that they had, and I think it shows that the president's very engaged on foreign policy, and they see that. The idea that he would sit down and want to talk to them about each of their countries and the Security Council collectively is massive for a president to be able to do this, and it was certainly helpful for the United States. Now they are in briefings with General McMaster, focusing on North Korea, also focusing on ISIS, and engaging on that front, and we'll continue to have other conversations as well. But as far as we go, great day for the Security Council, great day with the president, and certainly more good to come out of this meeting. So thank you very much. I've got some ambassadors waiting, and we will talk to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. So without further ado, Secretary of the Treasury, Stephen Mnuchin.
Seems like I'm becoming a regular here. It's nice to see all of you again. Earlier today, the United States Department of Treasury's Office of Foreign Asset Control imposed sanctions in response to the April 4th, 2017 sarin attack on innocent civilians by the regime of Syrian dictator Assad. OFAC is sanctioning 271 employees of Syria's Scientific Studies and Research Center, the Syrian government agency responsible for developing and producing non-conventional weapons and means to deliver them. OFAC has targeted these 271 employees because they have expertise in chemistry and related fields or have worked in support of chemical weapons programs since at least 2012. Today's action, less than 3 weeks after the attack on Khan Sheikhoun, is one of the largest ever executed by OFAC. In a single action, we are more than doubling the number of individuals and entities sanctioned since the start of the Syrian conflict pursuant to Syria-related executive orders. These sweeping sanctions are intended to hold the Assad regime and those who support it, directly or indirectly, accountable for their blatant violations of the Chemical Weapons Convention in UN Security Council Resolution 21-118. The United States is sending a strong message with this action that we will not tolerate the use of chemical weapons by any actor, and we intend to hold the Assad regime accountable for its unacceptable behavior. The Treasury Department, together with the Department of State and our international partners, will continue to relentlessly pursue and shut down the financial networks of any individuals involved with serious production or use of chemical weapons. I'd also comment that recently we had sanctions on North Korea and Iran, and will also continue to add to and monitor those as appropriate. And with that, I'd be happy to take a few questions.
Is this the only round of sanctions we can expect against Syria in the wake of that chemical weapons attack, or are you considering more? And are you considering the possibility of sanctions against Russia for not going far enough to try to dissuade Assad?
We don't comment on the specifics of sanctions that we are going to do in the future. But again, what I will tell you is these sanction programs are very important. They're very effective. and we will continue to use them to the maximum amount available by law.
Secretary, on the budget, is the border wall a deal breaker for the president, even to the point of a government shutdown?
I'm not going to comment on the specifics of that, but what I will say is I was in a meeting this morning with Director McMulvaney and other senior people. The president is working hard to keep the government open and addressing various issues.
Can you tell us what these sanctions actually do? What is different today than was different yesterday before OFAC moved?
Well, the sanctions are enormously important. So by identifying 271 additional people, these sanctions, as you know, will both freeze assets if there's assets here and prevent U.S. entities from doing business, as well as these sanctions have enormous impact with all of our partners around the world who also work with us on these issues.
We're not doing any business. Are we, sir? We're not doing any business.
As you know, the administration is trying to grapple with the Paris Climate Agreement and come to a decision on that. Where do you stand on it? Do you support staying in Paris or coming out?
Again, I would just comment that we're having discussions on that, and that's where I'll go on that.
Are you aware of any American companies doing business with those individuals that have sanctioned today?
Said last week there'd be a tax reform proposal released Wednesday.
He did indeed.
So
from widely reported.
Yeah. I imagine that surprised you a little bit. What can we expect?
Let me just first say, I've been working with the president for over the last year on his economic plan in regards to creating growth. The president is very determined that we can get to sustained economic growth of 3% or higher. We're working on tax reform, we're working on regulatory reform, we're looking on job creation, and this is something that on the tax side I've been meeting weekly with the House and the Senate on designing things, and we'll be coming out, as the president said, with more details on Wednesday.
Secretary, thank you very much. Along the lines of tax reform, I know the specifics of the broad details will be delivered on Wednesday, but without getting into the specifics, what does the middle class gain if there is a simplification but also a loss of deductions, whatever they might be? If we lose the deductions, how does that help the middle class?
Well, let me just say, we've been clear on what the president's objectives are for tax reform. Middle income tax cut, a priority of the president's. Simplification. The average American should be able to do their taxes on a large postcard. Business tax reform. We need to make business taxes competitive, and we expect with doing that we will bring back trillions of dollars from offshore.
Secretary. Thank you, sir. I guess the question I have is to sort of bounce off what John was asking about this announcement on Wednesday. It doesn't sound like we're going to get the finer details of what this tax reform package will entail. Is it a good idea to start talking about tax reform, something that you said can't be accomplished by August, when you don't have all the details?
Well, there'll be details that'll come out, and yes, I think it is important that we're talking about it, and we are going to move forward. I'll just take a couple more right there. Yes.
Can I just follow up on what Major was asking you? For those of us who are not completely clear about the 271 employees, are you suggesting by looking at these sanctions that there are U.S. companies, or they have holdings in the U.S., or they would be traveling or doing some sort of business that we're actually freezing or barring?
Again, I can't comment on the specifics of these sanctions beyond what we release, but I can assure you that when the U.S. puts out sanctions, they have impacts both here and throughout the world, and we wouldn't be doing this if we didn't think it is impactful. It's quite impactful. One more back there, yes.
Mr. Secretary, would you say that simplification of the tax code or cuts would be the first priority? You've mentioned both the postcard and closing the gap with growth, but which is first thing that we're going to hear about on Wednesday?
Again, what I'd say, on the personal side, we're about a middle income tax cut and simplification. On the business side, we're about making them competitive. And this is the last one. Go ahead. Again, what I've said before is the tax plan will pay for itself with economic growth. Thank you, everybody. Nice to see you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary and Ambassador Haley. I just want to kind of walk through what the rest of the day and the week, and then we'll get to some questions. As you know, this morning the President had a call with German Chancellor Merkel, who had extended a gracious invitation for the first daughter and assistant to the President, Ivanka Trump, to attend the W20 summit. Tomorrow, Ivanka will be in Berlin at the W20 participating in a panel that is entitled Inspiring Women, Scaling Up Women's Entrepreneurship. This follows the roundtable on vocational education and workforce development, issues that are central both to Ivanka and the Chancellor's agenda that they hosted here at the White House in March. While in Germany, Ivanka will also visit a school for interactive tour and discussion with students participating in the Apprentice program. In commemoration of Holocaust Remembrance Day, she will visit the memorial to the murdered Jews of Europe in Berlin. A readout of the President's and Chancellor Merkel's call should be out already. Following that call, the President spoke with Dr. Peggy Whitson, the commander of the International Space Station, via video teleconference. As I told you guys last week, Dr. Whitson, who is on her third extended stay aboard the International Space Station, breaks the record for the most space time of any American astronaut. The President was honored to celebrate this incredible achievement by Dr. Whitson and the American space program and discuss the exciting future of space exploration and space science, including how the Inspire Women Act, which the President recently signed, ensures that NASA continues recruiting women for important STEM-related jobs in aerospace. After that, as I mentioned at the top, the President had a working lunch with UN Ambassador Nikki Haley and the other ambassadors of the countries that are part of the UN Security Council. Under the President's leadership, America has once again taken a leadership role on the world stage, and our global partners have welcomed this renewal of American diplomacy. Later on this afternoon, the President will sign a proclamation on Holocaust Remembrance Day, part of the week-long Days of Remembrance, first held in 1979 and later established by Congress as our nation's commemoration of the Holocaust. Tomorrow, as every president since the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum opened in 1993, President Trump will participate in a Days of Remembrance commemoration. As he said during his video message to the delegates of the World Jewish Congress Plenary Assembly, the Trump administration is committed to stamping out prejudice and anti-Semitism everywhere it is found. Following the proclamation, the President will host a credential ceremony for newly appointed ambassadors. He will then have dinner with Senator and Mrs. McCain and Senator Lindsey Graham. Later this evening, the Vice President will return to Washington, where he's finished his time throughout the world. While in Hawaii today, the President will have lunch with U.S. troops at Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam and participate in an arrival ceremony and U.S. PACOM before boarding Air Force Two for the ride home to Washington. As we get closer to the President's 100th day in office, throughout the week, the White House is hosting briefings and events to provide several opportunities for many folks in the press to hear directly from the administration and our officials on what we've achieved in the first 100 days and what we're looking to continue to achieve on days 101, 102, 200, etc. Throughout the week, the President, cabinet officials, and senior White House staff will be talking about the President's agenda on national, local, media, and various platforms. Finally, I wanted to acknowledge the distressing reports regarding American citizens coming out of the Ukraine and North Korea. We're deeply saddened by the death of a paramedic and United States citizen serving in the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe Special Monitoring Mission. We extend our deepest condolences to his family, friends, and loved ones, and wish his colleagues who are injured in the blast a quick and speedy recovery. We call on all parties to cooperate with the Special Monitoring Mission to allow it to fully investigate this incident. The tragic death of a staff member only serves to underline the urgent need for all sides, particularly the Russian-led separatist forces, to implement their commitments under the Minsk agreements. We are also aware of reports that a United States citizen was detained in North Korea over the weekend. The protection of United States citizens is one of our government's highest priorities. I would direct any further inquiries on this matter to the State Department. Also on North Korea, on Wednesday, the White House campus will play host to a briefing for all 100 U.S. senators on the subject. The briefers will be Secretary Tillerson and Mattis, Director Coates, and General Dunford. This is a Senate briefing convened by the Majority Leader, not a White House briefing. We are just serving as the location. For further questions, I would direct you to the Majority Leader's office and the office of the four briefers. With that, glad to take a few questions.
Going talking about the budget, how committed is, if this was asked earlier, but can you talk about how committed the president is to having the border wall funded this week, or having some funding in that spending bill? And if it is not in there, will he sign it?
Well, again, those negotiations continue with House and Senate leadership. Obviously, the money for our military and our border security and wall have been part of that request, and that is something that those are the president's priorities heading in, with respect to the CR and keeping the government open. I think we feel very confident where we're headed, and I'm not going to get ahead of the negotiations that are ongoing. Director Mulvaney has been very, very deep in those discussions, and I expect there to be an announcement soon with what. But I'm not going to start to take things on and off the table with respect to what the president may or may not do. Phil.
Yeah, Sean, just doubling up on that question there about the CR debate and the funding. Does he specifically expect there to be funding for the border wall, or would border security measures be enough to satisfy the president? And how do you differentiate between the two? For example, what could be funded in the CR that you could say is part of the wall, even if it's not explicitly
right? So there's obviously a lot of components to that. You've got fencing and drones, and I don't want to get ahead of those negotiations. They are ongoing, but the president's priorities have been very clear from the beginning.
It sounds, Sean, just to follow up, that are we backing off on the wall? Are we saying it is on the table?
No, we're saying that the president has made very clear that he's got two priorities in this continuing resolution. Number one, the increase in funding for the military, and number two, for our homeland and border security and the wall. But I'm not going to start to get into, we were having a negotiation with House and Senate leadership, and to prejudge where it ends up at this point would be, would not be prudent.
Okay,
Trey.
thanks, Sean. I have two questions for you. On the Syrian economic sanctions, how will the administration determine how effective they are?
Well, I think there's going to be a lot of ways, but I think first and foremost is to send a clear signal to make sure that they understand that we don't take their actions lightly. And that we want to do everything we can to have stability in the region. So I think there's going to be a lot of ways in terms of their behavior going forward that we'll know whether they're working. But I think, as the president has made clear, and Secretary Mnuchin just did, I think we have a lot of tools at our disposal to try to achieve an outcome that brings stability to that region.
And my second one on North Korea, the fact that a third U.S. citizen has been detained by the regime in Pyongyang, does this make it more difficult for the president to negotiate through China to try to denuclearize North Korea?
No, I think China, and we noted it before, Ambassador Haley noted it in several interviews this morning, but China has been very, very helpful in this process and continues to be, and I think we hope to see a change in behavior, but it is a very positive sign, the level of engagement that China has enacted.
Is the Trump administration calling for the release of this U.S. citizen currently being detained?
Well, absolutely. I mean, we want to make sure that all of our citizens are protected and returned home, but the State Department is playing the lead on that. Eamon.
Thanks, Sean. As you know, there's quite a bit of concern among Republicans on Capitol Hill about the federal deficit. When you roll out the tax plan on Wednesday, are you also going to include pay-fors in there? That is, those things that raise revenue as well as those things that are tax cuts, so that conservatives can be confident that this won't blow a hole in the deficit?
Yeah, I think we will have further details. I'm not going to get ahead of the president's rollout, but I'm not going to the level of specificity in terms of the pay-fors and the cost. We'll have to see how comfortable the president is. Jennifer.
Sean, can you tell us if the president is aware of the American pastor jailed in Turkey, and did he raise that with President Erdogan when he called Monday to congratulate him?
I'm not going to get into the specifics of the president's conversation. We're obviously aware of that action, and we're going to continue to work through the State Department on that. Jordan.
Thank you, Sean. Can you explain why President Trump didn't use the word genocide to refer to the killing of 1.5 million Armenians in his statement today?
Yeah, the statement that was put out is consistent with the statements that have been put out for at least several of the past administrations. So I think if you look back to the language that President Obama, President Bush, et cetera, have used, the language that the president used is consistent with all of that. Katie.
Two different topics. First, the border wall and the logistics of that. Secretary Kelly said he still expects construction to start this summer. There are still a few ranchers in Texas and Arizona who welcome the security but are skeptical of giving up family-owned land that's been in their families for generations. So What is the White House message to them directly, and what can you guarantee that they'll be compensated?
I think we will do everything in accordance with the law. This has been an issue that has gone on several times as that issue has been raised over the last several decades, or excuse me, several years. And so we will do everything in accordance with the law with respect to the land that's needed for that. But again, the Homeland Security Secretary understands what's going to be needed, and we'll do surveys and the appropriate planning to make sure that we minimize that to the extent possible.
And then the next question, on a different topic. The FBI and Justice Department last week arrested 2 doctors in Michigan for allegedly performing genital mutilation on little girls as young as 6 years old. It's the first case in the United States. What is the White House reaction to that case?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked before about pending investigations, and we don't comment on any pending investigations or actions by the Justice Department. Major.
Is 100 days, as the president said on Twitter, a ridiculous benchmark or an important one?
Well, I think obviously in the context of an entire administration, there is a lot that I think we feel very proud that we've done and taken care of. When you look at the immigration piece in particular, border crossings way down, the number of executive orders and pieces of legislation the president signed, I think we feel very proud of what we've been able to accomplish and fulfill the promises that he's made to the American people. But I think it's got to be kept in context, and I think there is sort of this artificial number that gets thrown out. So on one. Well, I mean, the context is it's 100 days, and you have 4 years in your first term, and 8 years for 2 terms. That I think.
Mr. Trump introduced a contract with the American voter over 100
I
days.
understand, right. And so again, I think when you look at the number of pieces of legislation, the executive orders, business confidence, the U.S.'s role in the world, there's a lot that we feel that a lot of accomplishments that have occurred, and we feel very good about what we've done as we head up to this first 100 days. But I think you're going to continue to see a lot of action and a lot of results going into the second 100 days, the third 100 days, all the way
If
through.
in 100 days there is no funding, explicit funding to the wall, and there's no health care reform or repeal of ObamaCare, would the president consider that, and would he invite his supporters to consider that a conspicuous failure, based on the promises he made during the campaign?
Right. I think when you look at the totality of what we've accomplished on job creation, on immigration, on trade, it is unbelievable what he has been able to do. And so it's not, you can cherry pick any couple of things and say, okay, well, what about this or that? But I think when you look at it overall, in terms of the drop in border crossings, if you look at consumer confidence and the relationships that we've developed around the globe and the accomplishments this president's had on protecting the country, on bringing back jobs and starting, those have been unbelievably significant. And so to minimize that, or to look and pick out 2 or 3 things, but I think, look, we're going to continue to push for health care reform. We feel very good about the direction that it's going in. It's been very positive. And I think that the construction of a wall is going to continue to be an area that moves forward. But all of that stuff is happening just as the president asked for and committed to doing. Some of it, has been a little slower, but mostly because of working through Congress and getting things done. But when you think about what he's started, he'll move forward on tax reform, health care, on immigration, on trade. It's been a hugely successful first 100 days.
And without the president necessarily describing it as a failure or not, would he say that he's learned something about the process and how long things take that he perhaps didn't appreciate as a candidate? Maybe he overpromised on the speed with which he'd achieve these things?
Now, look, with all due respect, I think that when you look at the lists of things in each of the various areas that he's been able to do, I think he's very pleased.
I'm talking about some conspicuous campaign promises that rally after rally he
Right.
made and said, don't worry, it's going to happen.
Right, and I think on health care.
All I'm asking is, does he have a different awareness of how difficult those things are than he did as a candidate?
I'm sure that there are things that you learn in the job, but I think that he is very proud of what he has set out to do and the progress that we've made. And I think you're going to see healthcare get done, but it's going to get done right. And that, in particular, is something that we're continuing to work at. We can't make people vote, but we've made significant progress and moved the legislation forward and improved it greatly. And I think that we are going to see progress on that. Zeke.
2 questions on 2 different topics. First, follow up on Eamon's and the other questions on the budget. Is the president willing to sign a continuing resolution that is not deficit neutral or deficit reducing? For instance,
sign a continuing resolution?
Yeah, yes. For instance, a continuing resolution that would increase the deficit?
I have not seen a score on anything that's come out, and I think we'll have to wait and see what the final.
You're not ruling that out one way.
I'm not at this point.
And following up on Jordan's question, the president has talked a lot about, has not been shy about criticizing his predecessors for some of their missteps from both parties, and also hasn't, has made a point of often blocking convention. So why not take this moment to label the killing of 1.5 million Armenians a genocide?
I think, again, as I noted to Jordan, the statement that the president put out is consistent with the last several administrations. I understand that, but there is it is perfectly in keeping with the language that's been used over and over again. John. Yeah.
Sorry, I was writing.
Well, you had your hand.
Would you agree with the assessment that some within the administration have that a vote on health care this week is very, very unlikely?
I think the vote is going to get scheduled when Speaker Ryan and Leader McCarthy and Congressman Scalise determine that they have the votes and they feel confident. I'm not. I think we've been very clear. The president made it clear on Friday when he was walking back over from the Treasury Department that if it happens and we have the votes this week, great. If it's next week or the week after, but I think we want to make sure that we've got the votes and we're headed in the right direction before putting some kind of artificial deadline.
But would you think that this week is unlikely?
I think that whenever the Speaker and the leadership over in the House tell us that they feel confident that they have the votes, then we would encourage them to move forward. I mean, I hate to, I'm not trying to not answer the question, but I think that's the answer. It comes down to when they feel as though they've got the commitments to push the bill forward.
Well, there was a push to try to get something on the legislative scoreboard by the 100th day. Does it look like that now will not happen?
As I said, we have been very clear from here, and I think the president has been very clear in his comments that that our goal is to get it done and get it done right and get it done to make sure that we have the votes. I think there have been I've read some background quotes and sources about when it wants to, but we've been very clear publicly about when we want to get that done. Kelly.
The president has been very clear that Judge Gorsuch, now Justice Gorsuch, is a big part of his first 100 days accomplishments. And the White House, in the rollout about the 100 days, said there would be a dinner with the president and all the justices of the Supreme Court. Now that is off the list. Is the dinner not happening, or is it not publicly being talked about because it's wrapped up in the politics of the 100 days?
No, I think that we've moved some things around on the president's schedule this week, but we hope to have something at some point.
To sort of sweep up the high court into the politics of 100 days.
No, I think that having a relationship and a meeting with the Supreme Court at some point would be a great idea, and it's something that we hope to have on the schedule at some point soon. Caitlin.
Can you explain the president's change of thought on DACA?
I think he's been consistent about two things. One, that he's had a heart. He wants to make sure that he does what's in the interest of children in particular. But secondly, I think the president's priorities since he took office have been very clear that the focus would be on folks who presented a danger to public safety. And that's what it's been. And that's where it continues to be. And I think he is someone who understands the issue and the priorities that need to get laid out by this country. And so everything that he has done has been consistent with what he has said from the get-go. Jonathan.
I understand that he said that the criminals would leave first, but last August he said that DACA defied federal law and was illegal. So does he still think it's illegal?
I understand, and I think that his comments that he made last week, that he understands that in a lot of cases this involves families and small children who've been here, and he has a heart. We're going to work through the immigration. I understand. What I'm trying to do is answer the question that I think the president wants to make sure that he addresses the issue of illegal immigration and all of its components in terms of visa reform, border security, the wall, all of these things in a system of priorities. And right now the priority is to make sure that folks who present a public safety concern to the United States and to our citizens are dealt with first. And that's what he's happened. He's also very pleased that through his action and his vision for how he wants to see to move forward on this, sees a huge drop of illegal border crossing. That is a big accomplishment for this presidency, and it's something that we're obviously very proud of.
Border crossing is a big thing, but amnesty is a big
I understand
part,
that. I just walked through the question. Jonathan.
Sean, how confident are you that there will not be a shutdown? Can you, from that podium, guarantee that there will not be a government shutdown?
I can't guarantee, but I think that the work that Director Mulvaney and others have made in these negotiations has been very positive. They feel very confident that won't happen.
So he won't insist that his priorities get funded on the border The wall, increased security?
That's not what I said. I said that I think
Is he willing to shut down the government?
No, it's not. Look, they are currently negotiating. We feel very confident that they understand the president's priorities and that we'll come to an agreement by the end of Friday.
And on the 100 days, if I can just follow up, the contract with the American voter that the president signed included 10 pieces of legislation. Right now, he's 0 for 10. Only one of those has actually been introduced.
Right. And I think that we're going to continue to work with Congress. As he says in that document, I will work with Congress to achieve these, and we are going to continue to work with Congress to achieve those.
But why have 9 of them not even been introduced?
I think when you look at what he has done, in terms of Supreme Court justice, the executive orders, the number of legislation, there's a lot that has gotten done. I don't think anyone, I remember very clearly the first few weeks, and still to some extent, the comments that got made about the pace that we were keeping, and we have kept. The president has been extremely busy, and I think when you recognize the amount of issues that he's tackled, the amount of progress that he's made, it is very significant, and we will continue to present all of that throughout the week. But again, as I said to Major, I think you can look at a few of these areas and nitpick a couple of them, but I think overall, he has signed a record number of executive orders. He has rolled back regulatory reforms. No, I understand that, but right.
To take action.
But I don't think there's any question that the president has done a significant amount for the American people on the issues that he has put forward during the campaign.
You're not describing the wall and healthcare as nitpicking.
Jim.
Are you?
No, I'm not. Neither of the. No, I'm not. Those pieces are not small, but I'm saying in terms of overall what he has accomplished has been unbelievably significant. When you talk about all of the other areas, the regulatory relief, the efforts that he's made on immigration, on trade, all of those issues. And again, what I'm trying to say is when you look at everything that he's done and the amount that he's accomplished in these first 100 days, I think you can go back and find an area, one or two, and say, okay, well, he didn't do this. But I think you have to look at it in totality of what he actually did get done.
John,
Jim.
on the wall, why is there even a discussion about shutting down the government over paying for the wall? Isn't Mexico supposed to pay for the wall?
Well, I think, Jim, the president has made very clear that initially we needed to get the funding going, and there's be several mechanisms to make sure that that happens. That funding piece will happen in due time. Alexis.
That is a promise that the
I
president
understand
made
that.
during the campaign
It
time.
is-
and
no,
again,
no, but he also
that Mexico would pay for the wall.
Right.
And now we're having a discussion that the
No, no,
government
we-
might shut down over the wall. Who's going to pay for it?
Right. So a couple things. One, as I pointed out to Jonathan, we feel very confident the government's not going to shut down. Number two is I think the president has been very clear in the past about the fact that, and this is not a new thing, he talked about this, that in order to get the ball rolling on border security and the wall, that he was going to have to use the current appropriations process, but he would make sure that that promise would be kept as far as the payment of it.
And just a real quick follow-up. If border crossings are down, and that's a talking point that the White House uses time here, is the wall even necessary?
Absolutely. The wall it does several things.
How can the border crossings be down?
Because
the
I
president's
think-
saying, well, we're going to have all these drugs flowing in if we don't have a wall.
Because you can't, just because you have a couple good months in a year, I think you want to make sure that you take prudent long-term steps. I mean, so the president is going to fulfill, and frankly, it's a promise that he made to the American people. I think if you're coming in from our southern border, he has taken a lot of steps so far that has deterred border crossing, but this is a permanent step that will extend beyond his presidency. 8 years from now, the next president will have that wall in place to make sure that it doesn't continue. So that
Mexico's going to pay for it.
That's right. Thank you, Alexis.
Sean, this might relate to Jim's question too, but on Wednesday, I have two questions. On Wednesday, when we see the outline that Secretary Mnuchin was just describing, will the president help aim Congress toward his decision about whether the border adjustment tax is the right idea? And also related to that, whether the pay-fors for the wall that might be of interest to lawmakers will become evident as part of the outline of what he'd like to do in terms of taxes?
Right. Well, I don't mean to evade that, but I think there's a reason he chose. We're waiting till Wednesday to have the details that he wants to share out. I'm not gonna. We got a couple days before that happens, so I'm gonna have to ask you to wait 48 hours.
Can you say whether we will have a generally better
I'm gonna-
idea?
I can
Will
tell
we
you-
have a generally better idea of where he?
I think
is
you'll have a
thinking
better
is?
idea of where the president stands on tax reform and what he wants to accomplish. Yes, John.
Wait. I have one follow-up.
Okay.
When you were just describing, and Secretary Mnuchin was describing, achieving an economic growth of 3% or higher, which is slightly lower than what the president talked about in the campaign, which was a very ambitious goal of 4%. I'm just trying to figure out, what is the timeline for that? Is the president thinking he would like to achieve 3% or higher in his first term because of the headwinds that were, obviously the United States is facing abroad? I mean, that's a very ambitious goal still, 3%.
Right. Well, and I think that he has taken a lot of steps, not just on the tax side, but on the regulatory side as well, that I think are clearly already paying dividends. In terms of we've talked about this before, manufacturing come back and jobs come back, and I think there's going to be a renewed commitment of many manufacturers, American companies, to bring back jobs, to grow, to hire, to expand here in the United States. And so I think that growth will precede the president's actions, both on the tax front and on the regulatory side. John.
Thanks so much, Sean. As you know, the first go-around at replacing Obamacare was not successful. Since then, are you any closer to getting 218 votes in the House to pass a replacement for the Affordable Care Act?
Yes.
And very good.
Got a number?
And yeah, elaborate a little bit more than yes.
Well, first of all, we only need 216. You're making it a little tougher on us right now. But I do think that we have seen progress with members in terms of some of the changes that have been made to make it a stronger bill. But we're getting close, and as I mentioned at the outset, when I think the president feels confident or when the leadership of the House tells them that they feel confident that they have the votes, then I'm sure they'll call a vote, but that's up to them to decide.
And a separate one, obviously a different topic, and that's the election over the weekend in France.
Yeah.
Any comment on the results that came out of France over the weekend? Would the president be satisfied with either alternative, Macron or Le Pen?
Yeah, obviously, it's up to the people of France to decide who their next leader are, and we respect the decision that they make in May. So our job is to work with whomever the French people choose. Anita.
Two questions. One, on the budget, the spending plan, what is the president doing? I understand McMulvaney and others are doing things. Is he calling members? I don't see anything on his schedule for this week. Are members coming over? What is his...
As needed, he'll be involved. I think the legislative team has been giving him updates, and as he's needed. He has talked to members, of course. I mean, I just mentioned he's having dinner tonight with Senator McCain and Senator Graham. He's had lots of discussions with members at various times. We're not at a position now where he is actively engaging on the way he was at, say, the end of healthcare. I think as his team tells him that needs phone calls, but he is actively monitoring and being given updates by the senior team that is working with him.
Talking about his priorities, I would like you to include them.
I think his priorities have been crystal clear. I mean, remember, it's starting in the first week of March. Director Mulvaney engaged with appropriators on the House side, and I'm not sure when he started with. So this has been an ongoing discussion now, almost for 8 weeks, with the senior team here and appropriators in the House in particular.
Okay, and then on the second issue, on the 100 days, if as someone mentioned, the president tweeted that it was a ridiculous, timetable or whatever. Why is the White House doing so much this week? You have indicated that all these activities this week, from hearing from different people, are because of the 100 days. Why do this 100-day push if it's a ridiculous amount?
I think we've gotten a fairly decent amount of inquiries from you and your colleagues, and so in order to answer those inquiries, yeah, well, we're givers. I mean, I don't think there's anyone in this room that hasn't lodged a request to say we're writing a story on the 100-day mark. We're doing this on the 100-day mark, and so we want to make sure that we answer your questions as truthfully as possible and as thoroughly and comprehensively. So we will have to fulfill all of these requests that are coming in from you and your colleagues. But I also think that we are very proud, and the president's very proud of what he's been able to accomplish in the first 100 days. And as we sprint towards these final 100 days, there's two things. One, I think because of the inquiries that we've had, we want to make sure we take an opportunity to make sure that people understand how much he's done in all the different areas. But we also want to start talking about the next 100 days and what else is left to be done, and how we're going to continue to work hard to get all of that done. But there's a lot that has been accomplished, and I think it's appropriate to comment and to share with the American people all of the things that he has done to fulfill the pledges that he made to the American people.
And just to clarify, are we going to hear, prior to the rally on Saturday, are we going to hear directly from him? There was some talk of a press conference.
Yeah, I'll have further updates on the schedule going forward on
Maybe not.
Huh?
The press conference?
No, I will have, we're working out some scheduling issues for the rest of the week, and I'll make sure I give you an update as we move forward. Kristen.
Thanks, Sean. I just want to circle back on healthcare, because at the top of the president's list of agenda items for the first 100 days was repealing and replacing Obamacare. So does the president want to expect to see a vote on healthcare this week?
I'm sure, look, he'd love to do it. If the speaker and the majority leader and the whip come and tell him that they've got the votes, then we'd love to do it. I think his goal isn't to fit it into a finite timetable, as he mentioned on Friday. If it happens this week, that's great. If it happens next week, that's great too. The goal is to get it done and get it done right. And so we're not going to jam it through just for the sake of it.
So he's concerned about potentially rushing it through. I hear what
No,
you're
no,
saying. He doesn't want
right.
it to happen this week just to meet that benchmark.
Exactly.
Okay. Let me ask you about tax reform. I know you don't want to get ahead of the announcement on Wednesday.
Thank you.
But there's a sense that it is more realistic to pursue targeted tax cuts as opposed to broad tax reform.
Right.
Will we on Wednesday see a proposal for targeted tax cuts?
Well, as you stated in your question, I'll let the president and the team speak on Wednesday with respect to what they're going to outline, but I'm not going to get ahead.
Does the president think that it's realistic to do broad tax reform without having replaced Obamacare?
I think that the president said he's going to make there's a lot of things that are possible, but let's let the president. He made a commitment to get it out on Wednesday, so let's be patient. And wait till Wednesday.
And just one more.
Of course.
Is there a plan for infrastructure reform in the works? Will we get that?
That's another thing that's on the list, but I think we seem to have our hands full right now with healthcare and tax reform. It's obviously still committed to seeing infrastructure, something he's talked about a lot in terms of roads and bridges and rebuilding things. But let's get these first two things moving. But I think you're going to see a continued commitment to infrastructure as well.
One of the things that could potentially have bipartisan support. Is there an urgency to get infrastructure reform passed?
So either we're doing too much or we're not doing enough. But I think, look, he has made it very clear that is a priority of his. As you point out, it's something that I think both sides of the aisle and both chambers probably agree on. There's a public-private partnership that could really benefit our infrastructure in terms of the financing piece of this. We'll have further details on that moving forward, though. Thank you guys very much. I'll see you tomorrow. Have a great Monday.
Thanks.